Well, pleasant good afternoon and welcome once again, friends, to West Indian Today. And throughout the course of the year, however, despite everything, despite all that we've seen with COVID, it's given us the opportunity to truly reach out to people who's made an impact in so many people's lives, who've really worked hard, who've really made a contribution in so many ways, whether it can be in the field of art, in the field of literature, in the field of medicine, and also business as well. I think that my guest today encompasses all of that. She's someone who I have to say I am indeed very excited to have on the program, and her list of accomplishments, well, I don't know where to start and where to end. I'd need another half-hour show just to introduce her. But in a nutshell, of course, the person that will be joining with me on deck is a medical physician and has a doctorate in natural medicine and a PhD in integrative medicine. She's a successful integrative physician and, of course, a celebrity transformational coach, has been awarded as New York's Most Powerful Women in Business 2019, and also was selected to become a member of Forbes Business Council in 2020. She's a member of the Global Goodwill Ambassador USA and also Global Peace Chain Ambassador USA, has been a successful entrepreneur, has taken the role in the organizing committee member and chair at various global summits, and also has been nominated for the World Trade Global 2020 Entrepreneur in Health and Wellness Award UK. Also has been nominated for so many awards, and of course was featured in the Formidable Women Magazine 2020 spring issue, has been also featured in the Hollywood Times and chosen as Phenomenal Woman 2020 by the phenomenalwomen.org, which is a non-for-profit. So there's so much. I mean, I haven't even scratched the surface when it comes to her achievements. And most of you might be wondering, am I talking about more than one person? But no, I mean, if you're thinking that, I can assure you that the person that introduction is for one person and one person alone. And she's also an author as well, author of a book that's known as My Soulmate, My Love, My Narcissist, which is one of the main reasons why we decided to have her as her Nava family. Those of you who know Nava, they've actually, from time to time, they've vetted several candidates who's appeared on our show. So a member of her Nava family, Jeannie Prasad, decided and vehemently suggested that I have her on. So I've given her I've actually spoke so much about her. Let me welcome my guest, none other than Dr. Bindu Babu, who has had so many accolades. I mean, I was kind of wondering, well, where do I stop, and what else is important? But thank you so much for being on the show, and it's truly an honor to have you on.
Thank you so much for having me, Imran, and you did a great job. You really did. You're wonderful.
Well, I don't know how to sum up all your achievements, but I have to say I truly commend you. And most fitting, most deserving indeed for the Phenomenal Women Award. I mean, I think that for all our young women that's actually, watching today, she's truly an inspiration and an idol for so many people. And so one of the main reasons, Dr. Babu, in which I know that we want to talk about your book, My Soulmate, My Love, My Narcissist, but I want to first touch on so many other, the many other things that you've been a part of. So first off, we are all familiar with herbal medicine and whatnot, and also homeopathy. I mean, I'm not too sure if that's connected to your field of medicine. But what is transformative? What does it mean to be a transformative celebrity coach?
So I have studied integrative medicine. So it's a mix. Right. Between allopathic, which is regular medicine that everybody goes to here, and then this holistic medicine, which is a variation of what you just said, homeopath, Ayurvedic, energy healing, Reiki. It's more preventative medicine, and you need both. I'm a firm believer you need both. So what I do is there's people, my niche is finding your life purpose, overcoming your obstacles, limiting the beliefs, changing your life to the life that you desire. But most importantly, I am a huge advocate of gender-based violence, against gender-based violence, and that's for women. And there's a high incidence of domestic violence, especially right now with the pandemic. And I help with the healing and the awareness of narcissistic toxic relationships. And it's very, very taboo subject, especially in our community, because it's private. We have a situation where we want to keep our marriage life or our relationships private, but yet we may be going through something that we don't even understand what you're going through, whether it's male or female. In narcissism, though, statistically, there are more male narcissists than female narcissists. But the amount of emotional abuse and physical abuse which goes on has to be stopped. And people have to overcome that. So I am a person who deals with clients one-on-one. I do workshops. I have spoken all over the world internationally at various psychiatry conferences I've even chaired, where I implement the facts of meditation, Reiki, reprogramming the mindset based on this whole science of epigenetics by Dr. Bruce Lipton, and all over the world, of how your mindset can heal yourself and how healing energy is within yourself. And how do you overcome post-traumatic stress disorder or situations after being in domestic violence? Or even if it's not domestic, any sort of trauma or violence that you may have gone through from childhood to what you are going through now. But I am a strong advocate of prevention and healing from domestic violence.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to talk about Dr. Bindu Babu's book, actually, in which actually she spoke about, well, the preventative medicine. And I think that she's been, as she said, that she's been an advocate for women who've actually been in abusive and toxic relations. And she's actually received a few awards for her advocacy for women. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But you mentioned Reiki. So, I mean, you're one of two people. I mean, well, actually, you're the second person that I know that's actually been trained in Reiki, and I believe that your training has come from the association with medical doctor Dr. Brian Weiss, who's the author of the very famous book, Many Lives, Many Masters. I've got to say, I read that book several years ago, and it's something, I mean, it actually answered a lot of questions that a lot of people have about, life after death and whatnot, to the relations we have with people. But, talk about this association with Dr. Brian Weiss in terms of Reiki.
So it was a really great honor and privilege for me. Like most people, when I started my journey, I didn't really believe so much of the holistic aspect. I understand it to some degree, but it wasn't something that I could understand because I was so scientifically based, and I needed everything proven, like on science, graphs. But this book came to me, that when you said Many Lives, Many Masters, and that changed my life, because this was another medical physician, Yale trained, Columbia graduate, head of Department of Psychiatry in Miami-Dade, has over 100 publications of his own. He was the chairman of psychiatry, and he was doing hypnotherapy on his patients, and he tapped into their past lives. And now this is like a pretty taboo subject for most people, and most people it's not. And I needed some more understanding. And he went through 10 or 15 years of journey research, and he came out with this book. And it's changed, phenomenal work all over the world. I mean, he's been on Oprah and Deepak Chopra. I mean, you name it. He's just phenomenal, and done a lot of healing work. And me being me, I went after him, and he trained me to become a past life regression therapist. And that's how I went into my whole journey of holistic medicine, where I understand there was a lot more with energy work and Reiki and herbal medicine, and how much of a collaboration that is. And I became a Reiki master during this time with energy work. So now I do Reiki on people, and I also teach Reiki, because it can't just be me as a healer. It has to be other people who understand what this is and who can help so many people. And now Reiki is used in NYU and integrated medicine, Memorial Sloan and Kettering. I mean, most of my clients that are coming to me to learn Reiki are physicians and PAs and doctors, and so many people in a different realm that they understand there's so much more healing, and especially self-healing. So Reiki was phenomenal. Past life regression is great. And that's how I started my whole journey with holistic medicine.
I want to talk about basically and now I think that this might kind of lead up into the discussion of your book, My Soulmate, My Love, My Narcissist. But, as you mentioned, and as I said, actually in your introduction, that you've taken on many roles in terms of, like the organizing committee and member chairs at various psychiatry-based world congresses and global summits. And you've been a keynote speaker on the topic of narcissism and about abusive, toxic relations. And you mentioned earlier that in addition to, well, the idea of that was put about by Dr. Brian Weiss, that even that's actually considered taboo. Narcissism, abusive relations, toxic relations, we find that even to this day is still somewhat taboo to talk about, especially in the South Asian community. But what do you think actually, we find that in the Western world that there are more women, that's been from the Western culture, that they're not really holding back in terms of talking about being in an abusive relationship, whereas some women are still kind of restrained in terms of like talking about this issue. What do you think is really, or why has it been taboo for Indian women to really come out on the subject?
It's interesting you say that, because many years ago I felt the same. Now, what I've noticed is through my career is it's not just Eastern women, it's Western women too. They just handle it in a little different way according to their culture. And they don't want people to know about their business. And they don't want their neighbors to know that their marriage could be falling apart, because everybody has this fear of marriage becoming a failure.
Right.
And what would people judge them as? And if I lose my spouse, I'm going to be considered a divorcee. And then how will I raise my kids? And my kids will be coming from a broken family. So everyone has that same concept, because they all believe, whoever believes in the institution of marriage, whatever culture or religion you're from. But in our society, what happens is we condemn a bit harder on this than the Western culture. It is considered real in such an extreme of wrong if you leave your spouse, or if you try to be a single mother, or it's not looked good upon. And women are afraid to leave. And women, unfortunately, a lot of them are dependent, right, financially on their spouses, or they're scared for their children. And it's so drilled in our heads that, if you get divorced or if you leave your spouse, your kids can go into the wrong path. They can go into drugs. There's no father figure, or vice versa. And it's really, really drilled in our community, and it's scary, And a lot of times, if a woman or a man leaves their family, their own parents and family will throw them out. They can get ostracized. That's the biggest difference to me, in my experience, between the Western culture and the Eastern culture. We need to support, and that's what, more than awareness, everybody knows this goes on. Everyone knows. It's just very hush. I'm sure you've heard about domestic violence. I've heard of it. We have stories in our communities that are so horrific of killings. Everyone knows. It's not about the awareness. It's about the community coming together and holding that person's hand and saying, I am your back. I got you. We will help raise your children, or we will help you and support you like a village. And that is so empowering for a woman to really make a proper decision on what they want to do. Can they survive? Because they're scared. So I think we need to come together more as a community of not only just awareness, support. Support is huge. Support is so important, to say, listen, it's okay. It's okay. You can go. We will figure it out. I'll be your back. Unfortunately, our community, it's considered as a shame. And those things have to change.
Do you tend to think that maybe the reason why that there is so much of the hesitance within our community is that because we feel that if the woman's not making or hasn't made the decision that she wants to walk away from that relationship, maybe it's not our place to intervene? Do you think that that's maybe one of the reasons why, we haven't, there has not been so much of support from the community in terms of women in abusive relations?
Support doesn't necessarily mean you have to intervene in someone's relationship or someone's marriage. Nobody likes that.
Right.
Support means that whatever choice you make, I'm with you. An example would be, there are people, women who've left their relationships, and let's say now it's a different life, right? It's the mother with the children and sending to school and coming back. And then you'll have other parents who come from nuclear families, and they're like, I don't want my children to hang out with that child because they come from a broken home. I don't want my children to think that's okay. And it's this kind of judgment and this kind of fear that a person has to battle being ostracized in a community, or being put in like some sort of different world of, you are now, tarnished, or there's something wrong with you because you're not following the cultural norm. So it is so horrific for a person that they'd rather stay in an abusive relationship than actually come out. And it's sad. It is sad. I'm not saying that, oh, that's the reason people stay. No, people make educated decisions to stay in a relationship because they may not have the strength to pull out, or they may not understand that this is not love, this is abuse. Because there are people who are so in it that they can't come out of it too. But there are people who are, should I? But then you think, well, I'm considered a divorcee. My children might become druggies. My family will never speak to me. They're not going to give me support. How am I going to raise a child all by myself? Maybe multiple children. How am I going to financially support them? I have nobody, because if I'm leaving, I'm leaving the world. And that's not easy. And then if you're doing that, what if I fail? And then what will happen to my kids because I left my husband? There's so much going on in a person's head when they make this decision. It's not just, oh, this person hurt me and physically abused me. It should be a no-brainer. I should leave. It doesn't work that way. But if there was a situation where a person was a little bit more aware of their circumstances and had a little bit more strength saying, I can do this. You know what? My aunt is there. She's going to support my family. If I speak to them, they'll understand what I'm going through and will be my back, an emotional back. That is all it really takes for a person to come out of something sometimes. But if we have also our culture and community looking at this as a taboo, or unculturally fit, or shameful, or, that has to change. That really has to change.
I know that you've been a keynote speaker, and I know that you've spoken at a number of universities such as NYU and also Harvard. So tell me, do you find that there are more young women, as we're coming into the modern age and the era of women empowerment? Is narcissism and toxic relations still a prevalent issue amongst young women?
You'd be surprised how many older women are involved. And we're talking about very profound, like CEOs, well-educated, well-financially independent women who get involved in these type of relationships and they can't get out. So it ranges all ages and all economic situations and so forth. People usually generally think of domestic violence very like stereotypical, oh, they must be in low socioeconomic situations or whatever it may be. You have no idea how many women that have come to me, or how many women I know, or how many women I've spoken to in my field and in my trade. Beautiful, strong, financially independent. I mean, you would sit there and question, how could this even happen? But what people don't understand, that it's not that simple. Like, people will say, well, if he hurt you or if she hurt you, and let's say they physically abused you, hit you, why would you stay? Why would you be in that? That's just like saying, well, if you really want to lose weight and you're sitting at McDonald's, don't eat the burger.
Very true.
You can't say that. It's not that simple, because there's so much emotion behind it. Right? Yeah, the burger's not good for me. I'm going to gain weight, but I really like it. You know what? One is okay. Let me excuse that. It's just one little French fry. It's the same thing. You know what? I really love him. He's wonderful to me when he's not in his bads. I can really just excuse this one, and then I'll try. And then, of course, you have to remember the other partner is always like, I'm so sorry. It'll never happen. You know, you're the world for me. It was a mistake. I just lost my anger. You shouldn't have said that to me. And this is how the cycle continues. And how does this really work is when you completely remove yourself from the situation, right? Like, if you're trying to lose weight, don't walk into McDonald's, right? Don't drive around it. It's the same thing. And then, of course, you don't sit with people who eat McDonald's, right? So you kind of like need the support structure of people rooting you on. You can do this. Let me help you. Let me make you something that's more diet oriented or healthier. And this is what I'm saying. You need a support structure. Then you can lose weight. You need the truth. That's why people have those fit bands, and it's the same thing. But people just have a very taboo attitude about domestic violence, as if it's a no-brainer. It's not. It's very emotionally challenging.
It's very emotionally challenging, not only for the person who's being abused, but even for the abuser as well. Would you say? I mean, it seems like as if that the person who's conducting the abuse, when that realization sets in for him, because I think that statistics have proven that there are more, more men who are actually abusers, unfortunately. But when that realization comes in that he's about to lose that significant other, the person who he is actually oppressed and also taken advantage of, yet he realizes that although he's treated her bad and he's abused her, but yet he doesn't want to let her go. She's a part of him. So, I mean, is it something when this approach actually to being abusive towards the significant other, is it generational? Is it, I mean, in the in the heat of the moment? Talk about this. I mean, what really inspires, the abuser to react in a certain way that he does most of the time?
Well, it's a very broad question because it depends on their background. Why are they this way? Like if it's a narcissist, there's a lot of childhood issues that made them to that point where they can disconnect from their emotion to their safety net. So there are different reasons why a person is triggered to become that way. You know, there's a whole evaluation. But let me take the example of narcissism. You know, you're talking about somebody who, generally speaking, with research is shown that it stems from childhood, and it's because they were never good enough and they did not know, they always had to prove themselves, and because this way they never felt they can be loved, and to not feel loved they disconnect from themselves to such a way where they will make sure no one can hurt them. They will hurt you before you hurt them. I'm going to catch you before you hurt me. There's always this phase. So love is separate, security is separate. So you can love somebody, but the problem with a narcissist, they're going to always love themselves first because they have to protect themselves. This has nothing to do with love. Abuse, a lot of people think, oh, abuse, he still loves me. No, it doesn't matter because abuse is separate. And it's your choice. You can love them, and I'm sure that person really loves you. Especially in narcissism, they do love you, but they cannot love you the way you should be loved. They cannot love you for who you are because they will always love themselves first, and because they will always protect themselves first, which means they will bash you in any way, emotionally, physically, financially, you name it, stunt you, embarrass you, put you on the ground in any form to put themselves first if they're ever triggered or threatened. And that could be a small threat. It could be anything. Even if, let's say, you know, you're married and your wife looks really beautiful and she's dressed up to go out, that's enough to trigger you. What are you doing? Are you trying to get attention from other men? What are you going? Because they're scared. They get insecure. And that's where it begins. Why don't you wear something else? You're wearing that to get attention, wrong attention. And it just goes into a whole plethora where, you know, a regular person is a little bit more confident with themselves would be like, okay, that's my wife. She looks really great. You know, I'm proud of her. Because you have, and of course, a trust issue between you two. So it's a very, how can I say, twisted way of situation.
You know, I think that there are many men, and I think I'll also raise my hand on this one while I'm guilty as charged. There's sometimes where, you know, sometimes where there's a little bit of the insecurities that come out within men. I mean, some hide it better than others, and but when you were saying that, I mean, there's so many other individuals who I know that can relate, and I do hope that this message will resonate with them. I want to talk about basically, let's come to your book now, the main focus in which why we decided to have this conversation. So, My Soulmate, My Love, My Narcissist. First off, that title. I mean, why this title for this book?
So the thing with narcissism, which we just touched about too, right, you know, and is going into that is, you know, you're in a situation where you're in love with someone, and with narcissism, it's very strong because it's the highs of the highs and the lows of the lows. And you get addicted to that trauma. And you really feel that person's your soulmate because you can understand them. Usually it's a narcissist and a codependent. A codependent is the person who needs to always please somebody to feel loved. Like if I make this special piece of cake for you and that person says, oh, you're just wonderful, you're great, you feel loved because that person appreciated you for the cake, not for who you are, right? So you're dealing with two people who are constantly going back and forth. you are so in love, you're so emotionally attached, you feel like that person is your soulmate, and nobody can ever understand your partner like the way you can. And you are so connected and so forth. And you go through these cycles of where you have the love bombing, which is so wonderful, a period of, you know, everything is perfect, you know, the chocolates, the going out, the dating, and that whole love era for the first 2-3 months, and then all of a sudden it goes into this drama where you're not wearing the right dress or you're not doing right, and so subtle, and it keeps going up and down and up and down. And that's why it's so difficult for most people to come out of that relationship, because you're just always wishing for that. If you see a person being good at one time, you would think they can just continue to do that if they just changed. But one of the biggest important factors is that a narcissist can never change. So you kind of have to really live your life and make some decisions and go.
Let me also talk about this book now. So, okay, how many years of advocacy, or when really would you say that the idea came about that, well, let's put all the advocacy and all the stories, the testimonies, and, you know, all the years of therapy into like literature? Talk about the initial stages of this.
My gosh, that was a good question. This book took me 3 years. And the reason why it took me 3 years was because I really wanted something that was based scientifically as well as layman. And that was very, very hard for me to do, because I wanted this book where it can go to every woman and man out there, so they can understand what narcissism is and what they're really going through, and that whole cycle, and really going through that depth of pain. Because anyone who's been involved with a narcissist, they pretty much lose their soul. They feel they lose their entire identity of who they are towards the end, because they're so confused, so gaslighted, think everything they're doing is wrong, walking on eggshells. It's a very horrible state. So I really wanted this book to approach those people. At the same time, the clinicians who deal with this, because most clinicians who work with narcissists, they can't understand the impact of that situation unless they've been in it. And that was why I wanted to make sure this book was geared towards the holistic approach of healing, right? Because when you think about people who are going through depression or anxiety, especially coming out of these type of relationships, how do you heal? And yes, is there medicines? There's medications like that, antidepressants, whatever, Xanax, these things that just alleviate the symptoms, but they don't heal you. None of these drugs heal you. You have to heal yourself, which means you have to forgive, you have to let go, you have to meditate. You're doing Reiki, all these different combinations approach. And I worked with so many women, and it has been so successful, and it's so beautiful to see their growth and the coming out and empowering themselves, that I wanted to capture all of that in a book. And it was so difficult. And then my editor, she was wonderful. She's just like, you can't put this, they're not going to understand this. And she's like, put this and take this out and this, and me, no. But then it worked out really well, and I'm so happy. I feel like it's a beautiful book, and I'm hoping that it's going to bring what I really want for the world, and that's change, awareness, and healing.